I'm Matt from the Loom of Time.
And I'm Nich from Evocatus.
And this is the Tomb of Lime podcast. We will be doing track by track on every track on our release, Admirable, O Daedalus, Your Son, because it's only one song called The Wings of Ingenuity. A stark departure from our previous release. So, Nich, have you ever been like, let's say, disappointed or, some releases not lived up to your expectations because an artist has changed their style too dramatically and you thought that it was a misstep in that regard?
Yes.
Okay.
I have been disappointed in that.
And do you with some time and some hindsight, do you think they did something wrong, or they could have done it better, or what do you think went wrong when an artist does that, and what could they have done to prevent it?
I mean, of course, it'd be a case by case situation to look at, and it's always a case of like, as an artist, are you trying to make music for what? What's the purpose? What's the audience? Are you making music for yourself? Mm-hmm. Are you making music to please others? Do you worry about the expectations of the fans more so or further than commercial success, if that's a thing?
Sometimes I feel like the artists that don't get a good reception, they say that they're doing all those things that you just said they're doing, but really they've just done a bad job, maybe? Is that possible?
And they've
as
just,
well?
Plucked a scapegoat from the book of excuses.
Yeah, yep. The old, you don't get it.
The example that immediately came to mind with that question was Machine Head.
Okay. Yep.
So they made some excellent albums in their sort of middle era, and then it just took a big dive.
Okay. Yeah, again, this is a band I'm not super familiar with. Like, I listened to Supercharger a lot when it came out because that was what was new, and I was listening to a lot of new metal at the time. But it's been a long time since I've listened to that album as well.
Okay.
So is this post or pre-Supercharger?
So where I'm talking about is post Supercharger.
Okay.
Immediately following Supercharger, they had like I'll call it a breakthrough record.
Yeah.
Through the Ashes of Empires.
Okay.
When I heard that album, I was like, what? This is next level.
Okay.
After having listened to albums like The Burning Red and Supercharger. I love The Burning Red. That's a great album, but it's a new metal album.
Yeah. That's allowed. That's legal.
Yeah, sure. At the time, when I was young, and I thought that was some of the heaviest stuff I'd ever heard, which is laughable in hindsight. And then Supercharger came out. It was kind of more of the same thing, probably further in that same direction.
Okay.
There was a slight lineup change. I guess that nu metal influence, or one of the nu metal influences, left the band.
Okay.
The Aru Luster guitarist, replaced by Phil Demmel, who played guitar in Violence with Rob Flynn, pre-Machine Head.
Right.
They started making metal records after that. So through the Ashes of Empires. The story goes, I'd heard on a podcast or on an interview or something like that they'd listened to this band that they'd never heard before, Lamb of God,
okay,
in the car, at roughly 2001, 2002, and went, what is this?
Okay.
This is incredible. We need to step up our game. And then the album Through the Ashes of Empires came out. Check it out if you haven't already. Then following that album, they made another record called The Blackening, and that was like the benchmark. It was 2008, I think, maybe 2007.
Okay.
And all the critics, magazines, whatever you want to call them, were calling it like the album of the decade.
Okay.
In all of metal.
Okay.
So if you're not familiar,
yeah,
do yourself a favor.
It's all new to me.
Yeah. And then
I'll have to. Yeah.
All the records since then kind of following the same thing, but not as good as The Blackening. And the last record or two, I'm not even sure. I'd heard enough to think to myself, I'm not bothering. Because
heard enough.
That bad. Like,
but was it a significant stylistic change? Yeah, it was. Okay. So what big stylistic change was it then? If it was, they went from a nu metal band to what you might call a metal band, by the sounds of it. What have they started doing since then?
I don't know what you call it. It's kind of, they might be trying to do the same thing, or they might have tried to pick up a bunch of all their previous styles and whacked it together. Mm-hmm. But it's just really poorly executed too.
Yeah. Okay.
There's an air of
okay. So that's less. I guess a deliberate straying from what their original goal was. It's more like a failure in execution, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. A stylistic change, nonetheless.
Okay.
And from how you worded the question, a misstep.
Yeah. Okay.
Unintentional or not. But I guess now
you're
talking about an intentional stylistic change.
Well, before we get to that then, do you think it's your taste that have changed, or do you think that they've changed, as it were?
Both.
Yeah,
but in this case, it was definitely their fault.
Right, okay.
Yeah. But hey, I don't care. Like, do whatever. As an artist, like Rob Flynn, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
There are going to be people who aren't going to partake in it.
It's not like you feel like they've betrayed you or something.
No, not at all.
You know,
I just don't care for it.
Yeah, I do hear that language bandied about sometimes when die-hard fans
absolutely, man.
Feel like they've been...
absolutely.
You know.
Metallica. Mm-hmm. Black Album.
Oh, yeah.
Black Album, like breakthrough album for them making the proper big time, like the stadium stuff.
Yeah, yep.
And then the diehard, like all the thrash fans from the 80s, like, what is this garbage?
Yep.
You know, what is this Radio Disney music? You know? And then they went on this weird, like in the 90s, just down this, hey, we're not going to do grunge, but here's that other thing that we're doing. And we're megastars, so we don't care.
Yeah, well, I guess that's the thing, you know. Their Black Album was a huge success for them. It's not like they had to make any excuses after that because they would just wipe the tears away with cash.
Just more bourbon and cocaine and, you know, money flows in.
Yeah.
Money's still flowing in. I think that album still outsells lots of stuff to this day. You know, it's 30 years old now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep.
That's embarrassing for everyone else. Good for them.
Yeah, I mean, there's an argument to be made that you can't have a band like that anymore, and the era of the metal gods is over, as it were.
Perhaps, yeah. I mean, that's a whole other episode to
probably
talk about that. But yeah,
you know, obviously this little guy here, this one track that we did separately and after NihilReich was a significant stylistic change. And it's quite possible that a lot of the things that people might appreciate about NihilReich are absent in this one. So I had some trepidation about slapping the Loom of Time's name on both of them.
Okay.
Even though, to me, as far as writing it was concerned, I think it felt like it came from a similar creative place.
Yeah.
It's still a big change.
Once your listeners now have heard in previous episodes your kind of method into putting your songs together, listening to this now, you can appreciate that it was put together in a similar way. However, it came out different.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's reasons for that. But, you know, I think there was, you know, like when Opeth hit Heritage, right? Like, I was...
Good example, actually.
I was thinking, you know, at that point for me, I kind of felt like Watershed was almost like a best of stuff that they'd done before. There was some good original ideas on there, but there was some stuff on there that felt like it wasn't so much. It just sounded like Opeth doing Opeth stuff now.
Yep.
And so I thought they were ready for a change, and that I was listening to a whole lot more of that weird 70s prog rock and Canterbury scene stuff. When they released that, I was just like, this is perfect timing for me, a perfect change. And I was like right into it, and I'm like, I couldn't have been
with Heritage.
Happier. Yeah. But not everyone felt that way.
No way. Really polarizing move that they made there.
Now, I do wonder if he had been like, I need a proggy outlet separate from Opeth. so that I can keep the Opeth metal and have a proggy outlet that's not very metal and call it something else. And then he released an album under a different name, whether the Opeth fans wouldn't have been so antsy about it.
I guess it's a nice theory, and that could well be true. Successful separate release, same band members, same lineup, whatever, irrelevant. Call it something else, release it as something else. Opeth fans will expect an Opeth record.
As well, yeah.
Yeah.
Like Deliverance and Damnation.
That's right.
Got both sides.
So I think what made Heritage acceptable to the wider Opeth audience that Damnation already existed.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
So Damnation and Deliverance were
there.
one massive album until they decided to release them together as separate records, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Like almost a double record, but not. However you want to call it, they were separated physically.
Yes, yeah.
I think that Heritage probably would have flopped harder. That's to say if it flopped at all. Not really. I mean, I think it did well. I'm sure it did because they're still doing stuff.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to look at the sales numbers of Opeth's catalogue, but without that evidence, I would shudder to guess what it might be.
Yeah. I think Heritage wouldn't have done so well if Damnation hadn't been so well received. Yeah. And I think it was well received because Deliverance came out as well. Yeah. There's the death metal fans.
Perhaps you're right. It's like Damnation was... I recall it being well received.
Yeah.
As another, seeing another side of Opeth kind of thing.
That's right.
But if they were like, this is all it is now, I think that would have annoyed the fans just as much.
Yeah.
Or probably more so than Heritage, maybe. But because they backed it up with Deliverance as well, it was like, no fans felt betrayed probably because they got both those things at the once.
That's right. Yeah, there definitely were fans who were betrayed by Heritage. There were definitely fans betrayed by the live shows in the Heritage era.
Oh, yeah.
That Opeth, I don't know whether they recognised that and adjusted the set list to suit on tours thereafter. They did adjust the tour set list thereafter to play heavy stuff. And even to this day, they are playing heavy stuff live. Mm-hmm. But I think Aki has made it clear that he's not making that music anymore.
Yeah. That's probably a wise move for him to say that, lay down the letter of the law. And manages people's expectations.
He can say whatever he wants.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
And he knows his fans well enough that, he doesn't give a shit what his fans think. But I think he knows them well enough that if he says, I'm not going to make that music anymore, the fans are going to be like, he's not going to make that music anymore.
Yeah.
It's just...
Yeah. I remember hearing him speak a little bit about when he goes to shows of bands like Iron Maiden, he just wants to hear all the classics.
Yeah, of course.
But then they play their new album and he's like, well, no, I want to play my new album. I don't want to just hit the classics. And I think that maybe that was during the era where he was getting flack for not playing the heavier stuff.
Yeah.
So I think he recognized he had his own, as a punter, had the same issues that his fans have, which is an interesting observation to have. He's, I guess, a self-aware kind of guy, which is good.
Every artist is a punter.
Yeah.
Right? They all go to other people's shows. Mm-hmm. There's no artist that doesn't go to other people's shows.
No.
So they know.
At the very least, listen to other music. Yeah, there are somebody. Everyone's got their influences.
If they think they know what fans want to hear. No, wait. How was I wording that? If they don't know what fans want to hear, like they're delusional. They know what fans want to hear.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. As long as they've got a little self-awareness on their own part of what they want to hear.
Yep.
Yeah.
If they can go, and on the other hand, they can play whatever they want and not care what the fans want to hear. It's like, this is my show. Mm-hmm. I've got your money. Mm-hmm. Whatever. I mean, if you don't like it, that's okay. I'm doing this for me.
Yes.
Depends what your goal is.
Yes.
The same as what I said at the start.
Yeah. Which, I mean, in the case of full-time professional musicians, has to be a financial part of it. But maybe they're kept afloat enough by the labels to be able to do whatever they want, as long as they've got the faith in them to be able to do sell the tickets.
While
and
ever
so
you're
on.
making money off the Black Album, you can release
Do
records
whatever you
with
want, yeah.
with Lou Reed.
Yeah, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, that wasn't Lulu wasn't released as a Metallica album, so
It's got their name on it though. It's on the cover.
Oh yeah, I guess still,
Yuck.
yeah. So, but let's say I guess that's the thing, that people can make the music they want, but they have the choice to have made the music already and to release it in different ways to manage people's expectations, and they sometimes don't. So is that unwise, or is that, self-confidence and hubris, or...
Opeth is a good example with Damnation and Deliverance to release something so polar opposite to each other, even though Damnation is super bleak record, really, really dark.
Yes. Emotionally in tune with whatever
That's right.
stuff they do, yeah.
Is there an example that you can think of where a band has made something super detached without a lineup change and then released it under a pseudonym? I can't think of one, but I'm sure they're out there. But it's not a silly idea.
No.
And what you said that Opeth could have done at Heritage, I mean, it was 10 years ago now, more.
Yeah.
So we'll never know because they continued down that path and now everyone knows that that's what Opeth is.
Yeah.
But are there other bands that did a one-off? Opeth could have done it. They could have split off from with Heritage, called the band Heritage, whatever. That would have worked.
Yeah. I think there was a couple of instances where a trendy genre came along, like hair metal, and then an otherwise non-hair metal band would release a hair metal record.
Yep.
Or nu metal. I'm thinking Celtic Frost with the hair metal era, or perhaps even you could think Pantera, but that was before Pantera, was it?
So these are two examples where those bands don't officially recognize those records as their own anymore.
And I think Slayer did a more nu metal oriented album there as well. No lineup changes. Oh, there might have been some, but
sure.
But no name change, but a stylistic change to follow a trend. And then, in the case of Celtic Frost, disowning it entirely.
Yuck. I love that album, by the way. I've got a physical copy of it.
Yeah.
Ange found it on eBay. It was expensive. She had to have it.
Yeah.
Cold Lake.
Yeah.
Jerry, Chad. It's really silly.
But yeah, no, those were probably misguided commercial decisions or something rather than an integral change in the part of the artistic.
Pantera, probably not. So the beginning of Pantera, my understanding, and chime in the comments if I'm wrong, but they started as a hair metal band. Mm-hmm. So I think there was another guy, like pre-Phil, for a record. I'm not sure which one. I know there was one like called Metal Magic and maybe a self-titled, or I don't even know. I've not even heard them. And then Phil joined the band. So the rest of the band's from Texas.
Yeah.
And Phil came from NOLA. And he joined the band to replace the other singer. And they did one or two hair metal records. And then something happened and they made Cowboys from Hell. Mm-hmm. Massively stylistic change, huge commercial success. Mm-hmm. Whether or not that was a commercial decision or something just snapped in their head and said, you know what, spandex isn't cool anymore. We're going to wear camo.
Yeah, okay. I doubt that Cowboys from Hell was like them going, this is the moneymaker. It's more like, we don't want to do that other stuff anymore.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. But then, we know from then on the Pantera story how that went. Massively successful, influential band that had a pretty pre-fame major stylistic change. Whereas Celtic Frost with Cold Lake and there's another similar record, but I don't think they hate it as much. Where that probably was a misguided commercial decision, where they were trying to... I think even TGW himself said that he liked to follow the trends.
We wanted to be very experimental. We wanted to be very courageous. We didn't want to be afraid of taking a chance. On the other hand, that doesn't guarantee to you that you always do something good. Thomas Gabriel Fisher.
To a degree, he saw what other bands were doing and not copied it, but like he recognized what was cool at the time.
Yeah.
He got involved with it. So he did the hair metal thing and gross. He should have just stuck with his
It's like sometimes it's
H.R.
like,
Geiger stuff.
Yeah, like in film, it feels like Stanley Kubrick at a sort of a boom of science fiction made his science fiction film, and it just put everyone else to shame.
Yeah,
and then this boom of sort of war films, he made his war film, and it put everyone else to shame.
Yeah.
And it's like, it didn't feel like he was selling out by following the trends. It was like he was moving in the same environment that everyone else was.
Sure. Yeah.
And doing his own thing and part of it. And there's other versatile directors like that as well.
Yeah.
And perhaps there are musicians like that as well. And if it sounds like Celtic Frost wanted to move with the times,
get amongst it. Yeah.
And I guess in some ways, like we complain about bands taking too big a stylistic change and going in a wrong direction, but we also complain about them stagnating. It might have been a fear of one of some of these musicians to that they would stagnate and fall behind rather than keep up with the times. But in those cases, they latched onto a fad that was soon to die or so on, rather than a progression of the genre, as it were.
Sure, yeah. I think as far as keeping up with the trends, Celtic Frost could have made a good hair metal record. There were plenty of other bands making good hair metal records. Mm. Cold Lake is not one of them. It's just awful.
Okay. It's not good by its own...
But that's what's great about it.
Yeah, okay.
It's like The Disaster Artist. That movie, what's it called? The Room?
Mm-hmm.
Awful movie.
Mm-hmm.
Now people make fun of it because it's awful. So yeah, they could have done a good job, but they didn't.
Yeah, okay.
Whereas Stanley Kubrick followed those trends or, flowed with the times and did a good job.
Yes. Yeah. So you think maybe if Celtic Frost had made a good hair metal record, they might have kept making hair metal?
Oh, I'm glad they didn't, because we miss out on all the stuff we've got now.
Yeah. Certainly. Well, look, I don't think Admirable as Your Son is my Cold Lake or Lulu or whatever.
Not at all.
It's just it's just very different. And putting Loom of Time, well, because Loom of Time hadn't released anything at the point it was recorded, because it was recorded with NihilReich in the same way that Deliverance and Damnation were recorded together. Mm-hmm. So perhaps that helps, I guess, in a way, because it feels more cohesive in that regard.
Did you have this whole conversation going through your head at the time before you released this? How do I release this?
Yeah, I did. I did wonder whether it, you think, oh, well, I've got this inclination to make this style of music. Perhaps I can have a 6-album arc of these kinds of songs or something. But you got to and you could go, oh yeah, I just named the band this and that, and So obviously all those thoughts come to your brain, but I think maybe the point of putting it together and putting it as a second part of NihilReich was all part of that practicality of that we spoke of, that we be recording at the same time, and that I had that fear that maybe it was my first and last hurrah and the first chance to, and last chance to make any music, and so it would be better just to lead with lead with something strong, and if that was it, rather than save the punches and go, all right, I'll shelve that song for the orchestral album or something.
Yeah.
Plus, because NihilReich was on the shorter side as far as LPs go, and even to this day, I kind of feel like it's more of an EP in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. The extra content that you got with this one kind of fleshed it out to the point where it felt like you had an album's worth of content, even if it was split into two quite different things. So yeah, all those things did go through my brain, and a lot of second guessing here and there and so on. But ultimately went the way that we did.
Yeah.
And don't really regret it. We released this one, I think it was a couple of months after the first, after NihilReich, and we released it for free. So I didn't want to double dip, as it were. I didn't want people feel like I was trying to do that to squeeze money out of people.
Yeah.
But people bought it. Like they, on Bandcamp, you can go pay what you want, and people still pay sometimes. So that's nice. But I do not think probably that as many people listen to this as to NihilReich because it didn't get the press coverage and so on. But because it was more of a artistic-y thing for me, because I didn't plan on playing it live, for example, it didn't need to get out amongst people's ears and so on, so that it wouldn't affect our chances of getting to the stage and so on.
Sure.
So none of that really bothered me in that regard. And I think because I haven't had the time, I suppose, to write more stuff in this style, it hasn't bothered me that it just sits and stands alone and is its own thing.
Okay.
The writing process on this one was kind of different from those other songs, in that although my vision for song structure and so on and those kind of influences was a similar thing, and you can look at the structure of the song and go, oh yeah, it's the same kind of thing. The way it came about was quite different. Like the other stuff, one of the reasons I was able to write all that stuff is because I had a routine for writing, and I would come in every week, maybe twice a week or something, 2 nights when I get home from work, and that would be my creative time, and I'd sit there for an hour or whatever and write riffs and do stuff. But the Wings of Ingenuity it basically all came to me very, very fast, and basically all in the shower in one sitting. And that included, like, the lyrics came to me, and with them came melodies as well.
Okay.
And it wasn't like there wasn't a whole lot of experimentation with it, because it sort of just came into my brain.
Did you have anywhere to write it down in the shower?
No, I didn't. Well, not that it wouldn't just mist away. No, I just because the lyrics were coming and they were coming with melodies. I think what I had to do was just try and repeat it over in my head until I got to work and got to my first coffee break or whatever, and then I could write it down, because I wouldn't have had time to sit down and write it down in the morning, because I would have been late for work, and I wouldn't have had time in the first few hours of work because I've got customers to serve and whatever else. So yeah, I just repeated it in my head, and it was just it was strong enough an image that I got. Yeah. I just retained it, and I don't think there was a huge amount of change to it, and it just all flowed out. It was the easiest song out of all the ones in this package to write.
Oh wow!
Even though it sounds like it might be the most complex arrangement there,
that can come after. Yeah,
it's funny. Like, I think Nietzsche, in one of the prefaces he had, I think for Thus Spake Zarathustra, he was talking about, he's a skeptic of things like divine inspiration, obviously, but he had those moments when he was writing it where everything just flooded to him, and he was just amazed that it came out of himself, and it was like where it felt like it doesn't come from yourself, because it's different from everything you...
If one had the smallest vestige of superstition in one, it would hardly be possible to set aside completely the idea that one is the mere incarnation, mouthpiece or medium of an almighty power. One hears, one does not seek. One takes, one does not ask who gives. A thought suddenly flashes up like lightning. It comes with necessity, unhesitatingly. I have never had any choice in the matter. Nietzsche.
Yeah, it felt that same sort of thing. And it almost seems, I'm skeptical almost, because it's like if something just comes out of you like that, maybe it's just because you heard something similar on the radio and it's just in your brain and you've forgotten about that, but it's just in there. And if it comes so easily, maybe you're just ripping it from somewhere.
You're talking about the melodies and stuff.
Well, any part of it.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I guess lyrical content is. This is.
I mean, it's a known story.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. So I'm not really
told
worried
in
about
an intricate way, but nonetheless, people know the story of Icarus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but musically, maybe melodies and whatever else and other ideas. Yeah, it's. I know that some. I can't remember who now. Maybe George Harrison or someone got sued for plagiarism on one of his songs, and I think what came out of the court case was that he did owe them some stuff, but they decided that he didn't plagiarize it. It was, or maybe subconscious plagiarism or something. Like he didn't do it deliberately, and he hadn't perhaps even been aware that he was doing it, but he's obviously latched onto some melody from somewhere and forgotten where it came from, and then used it in his own music.
It is clear that My Sweet Lord is the very same song as He's So Fine. This is, under the law, infringement of copyright, and is no less so even though subconsciously accomplished. Harrison knew this combination of sounds would work because it already had worked in a song his conscious mind did not remember. Judge Richard Owen.
Something like that. So
Wow.
because the song came to me so quickly, I was skeptical that maybe that had happened to me. But because I guess it's such a longer song, probably the longest one out of this set, and it has a lot of
Many
different
different
ideas.
parts. Yeah.
That came together. I thought it was unlikely that something like that's going to happen.
It was unlikely you were going to get a cease and desist in the mail. Or...
Yep. But yeah, so yeah, it came together really quickly. I guess it was just the case of getting all the ideas while they were still hot in my head, and getting back to the computer where I could write them down. And as soon as I put the basic structure in place and the basic melodies and so on, I could start filling it out with the orchestral elements and riffs and all those other nice things about. Although writing the rest of NihilReich, there was some revisions here and there for different songs. There was very, very few in this ones. It's like as soon as I sat down to write down a part, I just kind of knew how it was going to go, and then just put it down, and then it came out that way. It was bizarre, and I don't think I may never have an experience like that again, and may never end up writing a song like this again. I have no idea. It's just one of those strange things.
Now you'll be able to put pressure on yourself for a follow-up, and then like try and just squeeze it out of yourself, and then with that comes the frustration that it's not happening as automatically as it did before. And then you can make the lyrical content about that. That's a fear, I guess. I reckon there are probably lots of people who have had a great success and then try to recapture it and not done as well as they would have wanted to. And it's in some way I wouldn't ever want to try to do that. Let it happen.
Yeah. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. If it's not, I got other stuff going on. I'll go and do that.
Yeah.
But also, there were a few lineup changes for this one as well. So Heath, who was a founding member of Evocatus?
He was.
Founding member?
Founding member.
Is he responsible for the name as well? Is that true?
I don't know that there's any one person responsible for the name. Okay. I think it was
I wonder if he agreed with
shared.
that.
Heath, chime in the comments. Correct us if we're wrong. That's a...
Either way, he was...
Either way. He's a founding member.
The Heath we're talking about is an integral part of Evocatus history.
Yes.
And when I was rejected from joining Evocatus, he was one of the guys that I came across in my travels, and so was one of the guys I asked first to play bass for The Loom of Time. Yeah. But due to various factors, he only ended up playing on this song in particular, and of course Brad, we got to do the rest of it. But in addition to that, I don't do vocals on this one. So Jason, who we got to do vocals, was a guy I'd known since high school, and just a good singer. And at some point, back in the days when I was mucking around playing pirate metal, he was like, "Hey, if you ever want to do something, let's do it." And it's been like a decade since then. I'm like, "Oh, hey man, you said you do want to do something? You do want to do it?" And he's like, "Yes." So it was good.
Just sitting by the phone, waiting for the call.
Something like that. But and I think I was prepared to do the vocals myself, although I think I would have struggled to do this kind of thing. I did obviously demo it.
Had you written the lyrics and or the vocal parts with Jason in mind, or not specifically? I
think I probably had a compromise there where I knew that I might need to have to do them, so I would have to. But outside of that, I didn't feel like I needed to be able to do them because I didn't plan on playing this live. So there was an element of me not having to do them myself necessarily. So
because it's not like you can't sing, right?
No,
you proved that on NihilReich.
There's selected moments of NihilReich where I do something that I know I can do.
Yeah.
That's a different thing from being able to sing. So, if you're choosing the thing that you get to do yourself, then you can give yourself an easy time to do it if you need to.
I'm familiar.
Yeah. I don't think that I remember Devin Townsend, when he was approached to go on Aerion, I said no initially because he likes to write his own stuff.
Sure.
I don't think this is the reason, because he's a great vocalist.
At first he simply said no, because he doesn't like to sing other people's lyrics and melodies. I guess he didn't expect me to answer him that he could write his own lyrics. He told me on the phone how glad he was that I gave him this freedom. Ian Anthony Lucassen.
Yes.
But there's something about writing for yourself that's different from writing just generally.
Yeah.
And I knew that, this one wasn't necessarily for myself. And the thing is, though, I listened to the demos that I had made of this song, and Jason does a way, way better job than I could ever do, I think. It's...
Oh, I mean, vocals without makeup and all that kind of stuff.
No, regardless of that, okay? Regardless of that, he's a much more
I'm
talented.
sure we'll hear it one
than
day on a B-sides record of these demos.
Never, absolutely. But one of the reasons that I wrote the lyrics and the music the way I did on NihilReich is because I knew I'd be doing them myself, and so there is a big departure in tone, I guess, in the way that these lyrics are written as well.
Yeah.
So then they're not written with the same emotions, and they're not written so that I had to be responsible for them in a way. So it came out quite different. But ironically, I think this is probably the most personal song out of all of them on there. Now you go, it's about Icarus, okay. Yeah, but there's something else going on there. But all the other songs on NihilReich are more like explorations of things that I probably don't wholly believe myself.
Sure.
Or elements here and there, maybe I do, but for the most part, it's a academic exercise, not a personal journey.
Yep.
So here we've got the most personal lyrics because they're talking about an emotional experience that you can have, and I've gotten someone else to sing them. Now, it might seem counterintuitive to someone that if one of the reasons that you want to do the vocals yourself is because you can put your emotions into them, that if I write a personal song that I would choose someone else to sing the vocals. But I felt that I guess the song was more important than that principle.
Sure. Yeah.
And so
Jason could convey those emotions, if they're yours or not, better than what you felt you could.
Yeah. I think he did a great job, and have since worked with him again on new material. Of course, you were there. He was there.
How is he not in a band?
Yeah,
honestly,
I know.
He can do all of the vocals.
Yeah.
Can he do other things? Can he play guitar?
I don't think he's a muso, no, in that regard. I think he's
an incredible singer.
So we'll definitely be working with him again if someone doesn't snap him up for some project that takes up all his time.
Even so, I'm pretty sure he'll make time for you.
Yeah, okay. NihilReich, basically no fake instruments, no synthesizers, no sampled things, no orchestral elements, but this one is chock full of them.
Yeah.
And in a way, I did want to... it's like when you do one thing, you kind of... It's not that I didn't want to get typecast or shoehorned into one thing. It's more like I kind of like to prove to myself that I can do something. And I wanted to write orchestral arrangements. I wanted to do it. I wanted to be able to say myself that this is something that I can actually do and do a good job of. And so it was an opportunity to do that because I knew I wasn't going to do it live, and I knew I could basically... That meant that I could go overboard, really, on the arrangement, and just really dive in headfirst and make that the focus of it. And so, orchestral elements became a big part of this song. And although I didn't want them as part of NihilReich because of that live feeling, since I've done this, it meant that I've been a bit more confident in the way that I can arrange things for this kind of music,
live or not.
Yeah. So you might find that it turns up in future iterations of The Loom of Time, although not to this degree.
Sure.
Because the next release will definitely be in the vein of NihilReich, just in broader in scope, let's say. Yeah. Lyrically, so lyrically very different. It's a lot less angry. It's a lot less... Thematically, it's different, okay? Even if the music had been very stylistically similar to NihilReich, if the lyrics are so stylistically different, it might have warranted at least a separate release like it got. But since they were both kind of different, it made sense to separate them in a more full way. Sure. I think the label ended up on Spotify at least just sticking them all together as if they were one release.
Slapping it on as track 7.
Yes.
I guess the outro to Subhuman and the intro to this lends itself well
Yeah.
to having it slapped on as track 7.
Yes, it still flows.
Yeah.
In that regard, as long as people understand that it isn't just track 7 of that song.
Sure,
And
yeah.
there is an ending to the album that already happened, and this is the beginning of something else. But yeah. It's a long song because I probably came up with a lot of lyrics for it. That's generally how things go. I just keep writing music until all the lyrics that I've written are done.
Run out, yeah.
Yeah, and that's sort of what happened. But so yeah, the Icarus myth is one that we probably all get taught at school or know of in some capacity. But for those people who don't know, Daedalus was a guy that built a labyrinth so that the king of Crete could keep a minotaur down there. Why he had a half man, half bull is sexy and inexplicable reasons, I'm sure. I'm sure I didn't know. I couldn't confirm right now. But either way, he turned up with a dude that was half an animal. We don't ask. All right. But Daedalus got locked away by the king because he helped someone escape the labyrinth. And then up there with his son, he decides to try and escape from the king by building some wings out of wax and feathers so that they could fly out of there. And they do, but he warns his son not to go too high, otherwise the son would melt the wax and he'd plummet to his death, which is how the story ends.
Sure.
And that seems to be the way it's told when we learn it as a kid. But
don't strive too high, kids.
Yeah,
it's bad for you.
That's right. But later in life, we turned to learn that actually there was another warning from Daedalus to his son Icarus that was also not to fly too low. And that just got stuck in my brain. And the reason I felt that this was a more personal thing is because I think that idea of telling people not to strive too high and not telling them, you can go too low as well, can affect how people aspire to things in their life. And I guess I was a little disappointed in myself in the way that my life had turned out in a lot of ways because of I mentioned that I'd become an old man before I even started doing this musical thing, and perhaps I was feeling a bit of resentment to the way that my ambitions were neutered in some way by what I might say is school education, maybe something like that.
Okay.
Total respect for all my teachers and so on, and of course, even if I had gone back in time to tell my stuff all the things I know now, I probably wouldn't listen anyway. But there was something there about, I feel like when you go to school and you're just learning things, you're not really doing anything new. You're learning the stuff that humans have known for thousands of years, potentially, depending on what you're learning.
Yep.
And you're being rewarded for just catching up, right? In which case, when you're praised for something at school, you're praised really not for doing something great for mankind, but more like you're being praised for your potential. Now, if you spend the first 20 odd years of your life being praised for your potential, and then you're thrown out into the real world, you might think that your potential is all you need to get by on. And I think that was something I was guilty of. And it took me a while to realize that potential isn't worth much without action and motivation and a goal and something to work towards and a plan and all those sort of things. And I felt, that maybe, the way that I'd been rewarded through this schooling system hadn't best prepared me for the life that I could lead, that I hadn't lived up to my potential, let's say. And I found in this revelation of the idea of Icarus being told not to go too low as well, so that the warden wouldn't wet his wings, was part of that metaphor. So that's why it's kind of a more personal song, even though it's straight out of myth. But I feel like that's what myth is. It's not about some historical, accurate thing. It's about these stories have existed and they've flourished and been remembered by people down through the ages because there's lessons in them, and that the people who learnt these lessons and remembered them or took them to heart were the one that succeeded in order to be able to tell the story again or whatever. Those ideas out there about mythology and how that works and how they're a great thing and so on. But when you take only when you censor the story and you take out the parts that are unsavory for the sake of the children or whatever. It feels like you're really neutering the story's power.
You're doing them a disservice.
Yeah. And I've heard maybe people like Neil Gaiman, who writes fantasy literature and often sometimes for kids as well, has spoken that the old fairy tales, the way that they were originally, are a lot more scary and brutal than they've been watered down over the ages.
In order for stories to work, for kids and for adults, they should scare, and you should triumph. There's no point in triumphing over evil if the evil isn't scary. Neil Gaiman.
And it's not in our kids' best interest to take all of that scariness out, and that there's kids' stories that should be scary, and that's actually healthy for a kid to be scared in some cases. Obviously, you don't want to. There's limits to this, of course. We want to be responsible with the way we teach these things. That's I don't think the myth of the human centipede is probably the right way to go for your young kids. But
there's probably no lessons in that.
Exactly. But to doctor the old myths that have survived for so long for a very good reason, it doesn't do us any favors when we learn them wrong. And I think this is a good example of that. So and so all this stuff you see here in the lyrics just sort of came out of those things, and thinking when you read it with those things in mind, it's like more of the lines actually point back to that idea. In the first line, what have you to show, Father, for all of your invention? It's straight off the bat, it's like saying, fulfill your potential. So Icarus has obviously got that in his mind, and you've been instruments, strings plucked by lesser hands, and you don't want to decay in a prison. When you look at it through that lens, I think more of the lyrics than I even realized, that so many little metaphors and little idioms and sayings and so on came out of me just based on this one idea. And they it just kept coming, and so I just kept writing, and then the song got longer and longer, and the way it flows musically. I think because it's not designed to be a live song, there's a lot of opportunity for a much greater dynamics in the flow of the song as well. So there's a lot more rise and fall and quiet parts and loud parts and fast and slow parts and so on in the same song as it called for it. I'd say more variety in that regard than NihilReich, because NihilReich, you need to be able to bang your head and play it live and make the punters happy, as I mentioned. But this one, that wasn't necessary. So it has a greater dynamic, and it allows
it's a bit of an opera.
Yeah, it allows for a greater emotional range from the vocalist as well. One of the big sort of creative moments I had was this moment after the lyric, in that fleeting moment when I realize what I've done. There's no terror in my eyes, though I'm blinded by the sun. All the music is in this rising chromatic scale, and then it hits a tipping point, and then starts to do the chromatic. There's descent. A word, descent. A chromatic descent to show that this is the point where he's lost his wax and we start to fall. And I thought it was pretty obvious, but I think it worked. And some people have mentioned that part in particular to me. They're like, oh yeah, that rise and descent, it was great. And then the bit at the bottom where there's this push of two chords. Sounds like waves crashing in the thing. I'm like, I didn't think about that. Yeah, it is. It's definitely,
it totally is that. Good pickup.
Good pickup. It was just the case that this one idea that I'd come up with, just all the different ideas just kept flowing out of me, and so I just kept writing them down. And they just, there's a lot of things where you're just writing, I guess the same sort of thing over and over again, but in a different way. But it all just adds to the story and adds to the complexity of it. And then, of course, it has to get to a point where it reaches the climax and then comes back down. I have to say I'm really proud of this song. Like, for the song that I probably the least people have heard of our material, I'm very happy with it, and I'm not worried that no one's heard it, as it were, because I know it stands there. Like, in my goal to have something to say, oh yeah, I've made a concrete thing that exists out in the world that shows what I can do.
You can go and buy it.
It exists.
It's got your name on it.
It was released. It was published. It's there that you can go and listen to it now. And so of all the things that if there's all the stuff I said about the frustration of feeling like I hadn't reached my potential. There's a lot of thought out there that creativity or any struggle, whether you strive towards something, is a Sisyphean task. You're just constantly pushing a boulder up a hill only for it to roll back down again.
The struggle itself towards the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. Albert Camus.
And that when you release something, all you're thinking of is, the next release, okay? And that it's almost like musicians are always just chasing that high of that show or that release or so on, but it's a fleeting moment of
the boulder getting to
achievement,
the top.
Yeah. But it's so fleeting that it's generally not worth it. But I have to say that after years of feeling frustrated with myself for not having done something with my life when so many other people had just seized the day and done it, now that it's out, I feel so much more confident about myself and better about myself. And I know that it's almost like you're not supposed to feel that way because it's meant to be a Sisyphean task that you're never supposed to finish. And they warn you that if you chase that kind of thing, you'll never be satisfied.
Right.
But I got to tell people, I think, that there's something that comes with finishing a thing and having it done. And I think just having done that first thing, no matter what it was, and even if it's terrible and no one listens to it or whatever it might be, it doesn't matter. I think you'll feel better if you can really get that thing done and achieve that one thing, because I had, nothing really creatively to show for myself, and now I do. And I think it made a world of difference. And it wasn't the case that it was a fleeting moment of glory, because I guess it wasn't really for the glory. It's given me a sense of achievement that I didn't think I was allowed to have after something like this. And so I think if there are people out there who are feeling like frustrated, and I know what it's like to feel like you can blame a lot of people for why you haven't done so well. But if you can recognize that there's an element where you can seize the day and do something for yourself, then I have to say, do it. And once you've hit your stride and you've got a step and you've got to, no matter how small a mountain it is, you've pushed this rock up, that achievement that you get there, that sense of achievement, will probably help you to push your rocks up much further mountains if you want to. So it's a weird thing, but I don't want to say don't listen to those people who say don't chase the fleeting moment of glory, because I'm sure that is a problem for a lot of people in a lot of different creative industries as well.
Yeah.
But I do say if you can finish something, you can achieve something, you can release it or publish it or finish whatever kind of creative endeavor that you love to do. There is something in having done that first one. This was kind of the end of the process of NihilReich and Admirable coming together, and it was my first album, as it were, and my first real band. And having done it has made me feel a lot better in the intervening years. So that's what I'd encourage people to do.
Yeah.
Do a thing and finish it.
Well done.
No matter how small, no matter if no one listens to it, it's still worth it.
That feeling's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, people have listened to it. People have, bought it. People enjoy it. Look at it. Just look at it. You say, if not for the glory, but this is glorious to look at. How did you find that cover art? Did it take you long to find it? Did you find the cover art first and then make a song about it?
I don't think so. No. Obviously, myth is a artists use myth as a muse quite a lot.
It's well travelled.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of artists who have used this as their subject, and I think this album art has probably appeared on a number of albums before as well. And that's the danger you tread when you get No, public domain. Public
That's the
domain,
one.
right? So yeah, so that's always a danger that you're going to run into with art that's in the public domain, is that someone else has used it. But I felt like, I didn't care. I
Yeah.
don't care. That's fine. I think I don't think anyone's going to have made some very similar thing to what I've made musically, so I can put whatever thing that I want on there.
Yeah, that's right.
But
But it's absolutely perfect.
yeah, and yeah, you know it when you see it, and you go. But I think that's testament to just how damn good the artist's work is.
Yeah.
I did return to my motherland of England a couple of years ago, and managed to see this one in the flesh at the gallery.
Yeah,
at
right.
the Tate Gallery, it was really cool to this has been out for a while at that point, and I managed to see it, and there's this kind of strange emotional connection between me and that artwork now.
Nice.
That's the other artwork is in the same gallery, the
Really?
NihilReich artwork, but it's not on display. I actually emailed them and said, "Is there any chance you could get it out for me?" But no, they don't do that. I think unless you're
Hey,
doing
strange request.
unless you, I didn't know if there was a channel for having that done, but no, apparently. Unless you're doing a PhD on the artwork or something,
Sure.
they're not just gonna.
How
go
does this
into
not
the
count as a
warehouse.
PhD? That's probably easy to answer.
Yeah, it's probably a real
No, yeah.
reason.
But I tell you what, sometimes metal albums hit the mark, sometimes miss the mark with their artwork. This artwork for both sides of this LP definitely look like what they sound like. So very well done on that part, and that should it should make that ledge that boulder's sitting on all the more stable.
Yeah,
Artwork's an important piece to accompany a record for music for a lot of punters, right? And you made the decision yourself that you wanted to release something on vinyl. That was something you felt pretty strongly about. You released it digitally as well.
yeah.
Just to,
So yeah, we didn't do CDs at first because I wasn't sure that there was a great advantage to a CD over the digital version, but there's something different about the vinyl, obviously.
yes,
So I thought vinyl and digital might have been the way to do it. It was later released when the label picked it up on CD. But yes, this was, again, I guess that was just part of the bucket list thing. If I can put it out on a vinyl record, a format that I do love, then I can be like, yeah, okay, I can die now. That's fine.
that's right. Yeah.
It was all part and parcel of that. So it was, a lot of effort to get all this sort of stuff done. But for a first release, it was just go big or go home.
Yeah.
Because, you never know if you're going to get to go big again, ever again. So
That's right.
you just got to go for it.
But yeah, the artwork is a really important part of the this final package as a tangible thing you can hold in your hands.
Yeah.
Imagine records that don't have this, right?
Yeah.
You can have it pressed on a disc,
Yeah.
and you can have it in a case.
It's like it's
For what?
yeah.
It's just a medium,
Yeah.
but like this is something to hold and to cherish and to,
And I do feel
Peer
like
over.
there's a connection. If people have the artwork and they listen to the music at the same time, they can associate the two together, right? The other thing I think of is in the lyrics booklet, although not because this one didn't really come with one, in the CD, I felt like a strong color is important in the lyric booklet, like a sort of color theme throughout the packaging, because I know there are albums that I've listened to, and then I've kind of connected that color to that sound, and it's a strange thing. Either way, I just wanted a strong color to go with it.
Like I said, the music sounds like what this picture looks like.
Yeah, and maybe it would have sounded like whatever other picture I could have picked for it as well.
Maybe.
But the point is, this was the picture, and this is the connection. I don't think that these artists need my music to enrich the art. Okay, the art's there to enrich my music, but at the same time, I do kind of like the idea of dredging up very old, whatever it might be, and reintroducing it to the modern age, or however that might be. And that's why I try to. I have probably a more a greater interest in reading old books than I do with new
Okay.
ones, because I know that as time goes on, less and less people would have read that thing. It has to have happened, so there has to be some kind of old guard to keep those memories alive of the great works of yesteryear.
Yeah.
And my little contribution to the titans of art that I'm presenting the artwork of is to slap it on my album, so that when someone who might be a metal fan but may not be familiar with this artwork is going to see it and go, "Oh wow, that looks really cool," and hopefully appreciate how cool the artwork is.
Yeah.
And I also like to, as part of my musical mission, was to kind of take old ideas and sort of corrupt them and change them and repurpose them for things that they weren't originally made for.
Mm-hmm.
The artwork is the same idea. So not some, I mean, the lyric, the image on Admirable, Daedalus, your son, is quite almost defeated. He's dead at this point, right? He's not winning anything, right? But the lyrics are kind of triumphant. They're about the fact that he actually, although he dies by the end of it, it was kind of worth it because he
did what he set out to do.
Yeah, he achieved heights that no one ever had, and that although his legacy won't be whatever he did after this point, it will be the legacy of that great act will last longer than whatever he might have done elsewise. And I think people have made that observation in various literature as well, that maybe he just didn't fly too high, just floated to the ground and then went off and just did normal stuff. But no, now he's got
people would have got over it.
A sea named after him, and we're telling his tale and so on. So it's like the big risky achievement it can be worth it. It can be worth it, even though when we were originally told this myth, it was deliberately saying that is not the case. So yeah, I'm taking the image of a defeated Icarus and I'm putting it on a song about a triumphant Icarus. And the same with NihilReich. It's like nihilism is about sort of the defeat of meaning by death. And the original purpose of this artwork was that the achievements of Christ on the cross were so much greater than the returning conqueror, and he realizes when he sees it. But in my sort of repurposed version, it's like it's not Christ triumphant here. He's on a cross. He's a dead guy too.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of repurposing that. And yeah, I don't. There's a crown here, and there's something about the way that there's a lot of theme on the album about like how we like to think of ourselves as sovereign over our own lives, but it doesn't work out that way. And I mean, the painting is called The Two Crowns, right? But there's also a crown on the Admirable Daedalus cover as well. And so there's thematic ties there as well. So, I know that, and to have it, basically the logo's in the same place and the font's basically the same and everything, it ties it all together as a theme. And that was important to me as well, because sometimes it's almost like bands take a while to find their feet if they don't have a strong vision for what they want to do.
Yeah.
And then they come into it and then it makes sense. But they've got all this weird oddball stuff where they don't know what they're doing at the beginning. But I wanted to have a strong vision right from the get-go.
Yeah.
And, if you think about all this stuff and you just have a plan, then it probably comes out like you planned it.
Together,
And that can be an important element for the image that you want. So all these things come together to make it a cohesive package, I would hope, even though the music is so different in some ways. Hopefully all the similarities and the way that we did things the same will help people to understand how similar it is. And yeah, this kind of brings us to the end of the era of the initial Loom of Time foray into music. So we've done a track by track of all of them now.
Yeah.
So onwards and upwards. So we are gearing up to release another album, so we'll have some more to say, but maybe, hopefully, if you've been listening along to what we've been talking about, you'll be able to better appreciate what we're doing in the future, I would hope. You'll be able to see the way we did things then. Perhaps we'll be able to better appreciate what we do in the future, I hope.
Yeah, I hope so. looking forward to that.